that's what you can do. All right, so I'm going to share my screen again. And we're going to get moving along with our little session today. So where we're going to start is we're going to start with Teams today. And this is, look, in essence, Teams is where Microsoft is heading, both in business and also in education. We are throwing pretty much everything that we have into Teams, meaning that it's our big bet for the future of Office. But also in terms of the resources and everything else that we are bringing into Teams, meaning apps and other things as well, there's a whole lot going on with Teams. And so what I'm going to do is, and forgive me for those of you that are, have been using Teams for a little while, hopefully there's going to be something you can draw from this in this little basic introduction that I do. But Teams is changing at such a rapid rate. And that's to do with the fact that, that Microsoft is, as I said, it's our big bet, that, there's new things all the time. So I'm sure you're going to grab something from this. Thing about Teams, though, is it's one hub, everything connected. And so whether you're coming in on your Mac, your PC, whether you're coming in on a browser, dedicated apps, whether you're coming in your iPad, your phone, etc., the idea is that you are able to get everything that you need from your working environment from this one location. Okay, so instead of having disparate apps, which we will continue, I shouldn't say instead of, as well as having all these disparate apps, which we will continue to have, we're bringing everything into Teams. And so what we are hoping is eventually going to happen is that you will turn on your computer in the morning, and Teams is where it will all happen. And it's almost like an operating system. I'm not saying it is an operating system, but it's almost like an operating system in that everything comes inside Teams. And even the way we talk about bringing our apps into Teams is the same way we talk about bringing, new apps onto our phone and that kind of thing as well. But the heart of Teams is basically the communication. So what we've done is we've rolled Skype and Skype for Business into Teams. So those two are vanishing. At a commercial perspective, maybe Skype will continue. I'm not 100% sure, but definitely Skype for Business is vanishing and becoming part of Teams. And so we have ramped up the potentiality and the capability of Skype into Teams. And so we have our Teams calls, and they are video calls as well as voice calls. And now what's happening with Teams is you can have your telephony system through voice over internet protocol through Teams. You can have Teams rooms where you walk in and there's all sorts of hardware and bits and pieces for people to be making calls in there with video and all kinds of stuff as well. There's the chat as well. You're experiencing some of that with both the calls and the chat. We're experiencing that now through what we're doing here. And there's the teams themselves. And so I intentionally moved this session, meaning that our 2 days of the e-learning leaders, into a team. So you could experience that. And it is a class team. So you're seeing what the students see and you're experiencing what the students experience. And the way that I've broken those unit topics down into channels and things like that, you could be doing that sort of thing as well. But we're going to explore what Teams can look like in a secondary context, what Teams can look like in a primary context as well, because it can be quite unique. I don't know if you can hear my dog, but they're squelching along here. Life's good. All right, so you can bring all your apps in as well, right? So you can bring your Microsoft apps, of course, so things like Word and Excel and PowerPoint and other things, you can be bringing those into your Teams experience. You can also be bringing Outlook, not Outlook the app, but you can be bringing Outlook the web version into Teams and things like that. It can all be in there, and of course Forms as well. But what we've also done is we've opened it up to developers outside of Microsoft, and so you can bring in other apps as well, third-party apps. So you can see we've got things like Wakelet and Wikipedia, dedicated apps, Quizlet, Kahoot, YouTube, etc. Whole heap of education apps, and we'll have a look at where they live and how we bring them into our experience as well. And then lastly is the assignments features, which is what Carolyn was talking about before. So the ability to set and mark, for students to submit assignments, the combination of assignments with things like Word and OneNote, and also Flipgrid as well. Cindy, has Flipgrid been switched on in the South Australian Department tenant yet?
Yes, I think we do have some schools using it. I haven't personally used it, so if people want to try and they have any difficulties, just let me know.
Yeah, sure. Okay. So I'm not going to harp on that. I don't have an agenda there with Flipgrid, but I just wanted to let you know that it exists, and it is a sort of a vodcast tool where students can make their own videos, and it's all about student voice, etc. Jump in and have a look. It's quite a good tool. All right, so when we talk about teams for educators, what I would like to know in the chat, please, if you could please throw in, is your school using Teams? And, you may want to say, yes, and then give me a score out of 10 in terms of how much you think you're using it, right? So 10 out of 10 is all the students, all the staff. 0 out of 10 is we're not using it at all. So just yes and no, and then give me a score out of 10 where you think your school is with using Teams. Just in the chat. Okay, we've got a 1, 7 to 10, good. Another 1 from Corn Area, 5, 4 out of 10, 4 out of 10, fantastic. Is that it? No one else? There we go, 1 out of 10, 4. Okay, brilliant. It's interesting, isn't it, that you're probably going to get different responses from people at the same school, which is kind of funny. Just showing that, other people are probably more across it than each other. Okay, very good. Thanks for that, guys. I really appreciate that. So Teams for educators. Well, let's talk about just a little bit more about Teams first. And that is, Teams is free. That is free for you. It's been paid for by the department, and it provides a consistent experience across devices. Okay, but I will stress that not all devices are the same, right? And so therefore, and not all capabilities in devices are the same. So therefore, the experience, when we say consistent, I challenge that, and I might change that for my next presentation. But it's available across platforms, but it is different depending on where you come in. So the first thing is we have dedicated desktop apps for Apple, for Microsoft, so for Windows, for OS, Mac OS, and also for Linux. So you can download those apps. And if you're on a laptop, that is where you're going to get the best, most comprehensive experience, okay? It's usually a little bit quicker. There's usually more features than there are in the browser, etc. You can get dedicated apps for your tablets. So whether it's an Android tablet or an Apple tablet, and the same for the phones as well. You can get dedicated apps. But we can also go through in our browser, right? And so I tend to have, oftentimes when I'm doing presentations and things, I will have it open in my app at the same time as having it open in my browser. And there's nothing to stop you from doing that. So we do run through Edge, we run through Chrome, and we also run through Safari. Okay, so you can have that experience. Now, if you haven't got the Teams app on your machine, you can go to aka.ms/get Teams, and you can download it onto your machine. So talking about creating our school team, all right? So my dogs are howling there. So when we create teams in the education space, we actually are able to create 4 different kinds of teams. One is a class team, which we'll address a little bit later, which, as it says, is working with our students. It creates some education features, the way that it sets up assignments, the way that it sets up OneNote, as well, is a little bit different. We have a professional learning community team, which also has some of the assignment features, but it sets up a unique professional learning community OneNote as well. We have a staff team. The staff team actually sets up a staff OneNote, and that's really largely the difference between these two, is this one sets up a PLC OneNote and this one sets up a staff OneNote. A lot of schools don't necessarily want the staff OneNote, and so they actually create their school teams over here. And when I say school team, I mean for the entire staff. And that's actually my recommendation as well, right? But it's only a recommendation, it's not a hard and fast rule. So when you use teams outside of education, out in the rest of the world, there's only one kind of team that you can create, which is this kind here. But in education, we've actually set up a few others for you. So my advice to you is when you set up your school team, if it hasn't been set up already, is to use the other kind of team, which does not set up a OneNote, all right? And then you can build your own OneNote into there later on, so you have a little bit more control. A team can support up to 5,000 members, all right? And that this changes over time. Originally, it was much less than 5,000, but you can have 5,000 members in a team at once. Every time I see this, I think I want to change this. I want to say lots of things are possible with Teams, not everything. But you can communicate effectively through conversations, chats, online meetings, calls, and web conferencing. You can work collaboratively in the OneNote notebook, Office 365 apps like Word, Excel, PowerPoint, etc. And we did that last time when we worked together, right? We saw how that could work. And you customize your workspace with Microsoft and third-party apps as needed. Now, the thing about Teams is the default setting is that everything is accessible to everybody. Okay, because the idea is the intent is it's Teams. It's about people working together and it's about collaboration. So when we create things in Teams, it's automatically shared with everybody who is in the team. So we're not having to share things out. Now there are ways you can dial that back, but nevertheless, I just want to stress that to you. So that's why I talked about the difference between creating things in my OneDrive, which I may occasionally share out. These are my files. But when I'm creating documents that I know I want everybody to have access to, I'm going to be creating those in Teams. So what I want to do first is I want to take you through a primary school structure for Teams. And then after that, we're going to go through a secondary school structure for Teams. All right. So this is for our entire school. So when thinking about primary, and for those of you that are in R to 12 schools, excuse me, I told you they were coming to do my dogs. So I do my dogs. So I'm just going to have to pause that, guys. So please go ahead and chat amongst yourselves. Okay, folks, sorry about that. Yeah, they're going to make noise, and so just be ready for that. Okay, so looking at our team structure, as I was saying a moment ago, if you're in an R to 7, sorry, if you're in an R to 12 school, you may want to actually break it down into 2 lots of teams, or you may want to adapt and have a large team. That's entirely up to you. But again, these are all recommendations. These are all I don't know if you guys can hear that. They're going nuts. These are all recommendations, but you know, we're recommending these because we work with schools, and you know, there's a lot of stuff going on there that we can see. Okay, so first of all, the first kind of team that we would suggest is setting up an all-staff team. And this provides a central place for all staff to communicate and collaborate. It provides a location for secure file storage and sharing, and channels to focus on different domains of interest, right? But I'm going to show you what that looks like in a moment. Second thing that we'd see in a primary school structure is having a leadership team, because we've got a lot of sensitive files and information, you know, payroll and HR and all that kind of thing that you may want to be keeping in the cloud. And so we actually suggest that you have a dedicated team away from everybody else, you know, for just those people, the business manager, the principal's assistant, the principal, the vice principal, that kind of person. So those people would still be a member of the all-staff team because they're communicating with everyone. But at the same time, there's this dedicated team for those sensitive documents and sensitive conversations. And then, of course, lastly, we have the class teams, right? And so the class teams are a central place for all personalised teaching and learning, providing a location for curriculum resources, learning engagements and assessments. So this is where we are working with the kids. supporting the distance and online delivery of curriculum if we ever, God help us, go back into lockdown again. You've no idea, my dog is just going nuts because he's very anxious. He's one of those little toy poodles. So Office 365 aggregation sits underneath all this. Okay, so we still have groups and SharePoint and OneNote and OneDrive, all that kind of stuff. Guys, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to pause again. This is work from home. You'd think it was kids, but it's the dogs. I'm just going to try and put him in the backyard and see if that's going to help him. So give me a moment. Thank you for your patience. Okay, so it's sitting on top of all that Microsoft 365 goodness, and also it's being managed by the department. So everything is going into the department space, and it's got a very, very high level of security. So rather than take you into secondary right away, I'm going to show you what that can look like in a primary context. So I'm going to bring this up here, take you into my teams, and let's have a look first at our primary school team. And the primary school team looks like this. So this is we call this Murray Street Primary School. It's just a demo, but you can see here that we've got a general channel. General's channels sit at the top. They can't be renamed. But then what we've done is we've created all these different channels down the side here, which are different domains within the school. So we've got things like this principle is very progressive. They've even put the Australian Education Union have their own channel in there for their union rep. We've got ES staff, which is a Victorian way of saying teachers' aides. Facilities and grounds are there as well, so that people can be communicating with the groundsman and groundswoman. We've got the library has a dedicated channel. We've got parent communications is happening in there. Now that is not where the parents are communicated to, it's where communications are formed. So information within the school about newsletters, parent-teacher night, that kind of stuff, for teacher-to-teacher collaboration, right? It's certainly not open to parents. Then they've got professional learning teams, because this is a primary school. So they've got the consultative committee, the English team, the maths team, the staff association, the STEM team, the wellbeing team. They all have dedicated channels as well. You've got professional learning channel. Okay, this school takes their professional learning very seriously, so they have a dedicated channel. All the specialists are there, because this is a primary school, right? So the specialists don't have their own domain. They tend to work as a group together. That's the way that they are grouped together usually in the school. And so your art teacher, your music teacher, your drama teacher, all those people have their own little space there. We've got team leaders. So this is the grade 1 leader, the grade 2 leader, the specialist leader, all those guys have their own dedicated space. And then we have, for each year level in the school, each year level team have their own space as well. So this is where prep or reception meet, year 1, year 2, year 3, etc. So what happens though is, like, if we come into year 1, have a little bit of a look here. This is where year 1 teachers work together. Okay, so once upon a time they would have had an L drive or a P drive or a Q drive, whatever it was called, and all their files would have been kept there. Instead, what's happening is within Teams we've got all our files. See over here, we've got posts and we've got files. So when we click on files, let's just let that load. All their files that once upon a time were sitting on a shared drive at school, which was not necessarily able to be accessed outside of hours, etc., now lives in the cloud, and everybody can access those files there. Now, what that means is, just like the shared drive, everybody in the team can still get in and access these files, right? But largely people won't, because it's not their domain. But where it's different from your shared drive is the fact that it's wrapped in posts. Okay, so the conversation is happening around those files as well, and around discussion. So you can see here, we've got, hey, year 1, don't forget to add your curriculum info here, and there's a link directly to that file. So people can click on that and they will be taken to that file. we can create new conversations. Okay, so I'm inside the conversation here, and I may want to mention one of my colleagues. All right, so I just like we do on social media, I mention Richard, and I can say, don't forget to, don't forget seems to be a current theme in this team, don't forget to blah, 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 blah. All right, and I throw that in there. And now Richard is going to get an activity notification. And when he clicks on that, it will draw his attention to this, right? So instead of having to send out emails to everyone, and we don't know who's reading what, etc., it's all happening now here in a very transparent environment, just like it does on Facebook or just like it does on Twitter. What it also means is, if someone asks me a question and I answer that question by email, that's the end. The discussion is finished and I've only talked to one person. Whereas if someone asks me here and then I answer it, everybody else in the team that may not even realize they had that question gets that question answered as well. All right. So that's what that looks like. Now you can see up the top here as well, they've got tabs where they put in their tabs, and they've got their curriculum tab across the top. All right, so that's where their training curriculum lives for them, so they can access it. And they've also got an LMS, or a learning management system, and that's got a web portal, so that's there as well. All right, so you can see that what we've done, and when we look at secondary in a moment, you'll see why it's different, is that the way that primary schools work mean that the year level teams can largely be built into the entire staff team. Okay, they don't need to break away. Now, you may want to break away those year level teams and give them dedicated teams because you want a greater level of granularity, and that's fine. But our recommendation is the fewer teams, the better, with the fewer channels, right? So you only create new channels when you need them. You only create new teams when you need them. Don't go into this holus bolus of, okay, we're in teams now, let's create a zillion teams, because people will get lost, files will get lost, no one's going to know where anything is. So you want to keep it centralized and you want to keep it looking like that. All right, so that's what that looks like in primary. Now what secondary is going to look like is a little bit different. And I will open for questions in a minute when I finish doing secondary, okay? So secondary has an all-staff team as well, but it's going to look different, and we'll look at that in a minute. But basically the same thing, a place for everybody to come together, whole school announcements, all that kind of stuff can happen in there. Leadership, again, dedicated space, just like we saw before. But where it gets different for secondary is we now are probably going to need, and in fact every secondary school that I worked with has gone this way, dedicated faculty teams. All right, because there's so much more diversity and there's so much more need for that granularity, right, for that detail, that they need their own dedicated teams. And then you've got the class teams again. Now in primary, the class teams are going to look very, very different from secondary, because the class teams, they're largely just in one class, one cohort, and they move through everything together. Whereas when we get into secondary, we've got a maths teacher, we've got a science teacher, we've got an English teacher, and we may not even have all those same kids in those same classes. So there's going to be a lot more class teams in secondary, but we'll have a look at that in a minute as well. And then it sits on all this same stuff managed by the department. All your files are much more secure than your shared drive and all that kind of thing as well. Now, Cindy and Trudy, are you guys still in the call?
Yes, we are. Yep.
Yeah. Did you want to talk about the admin portals and things like that, which are not in the cloud? Did you want to sort of mention what sort of files and what sort of systems can't go into Teams?
Yes. So some of our sorry, there's a bit of a replay here. Yes, so our admin server, we've got to think about those financial records and whatnot that we put in there. So we could say that everything on the curriculum server can go up, but with regards to your admin server, you may want to consider that before doing it. So if you do have any questions about that, we recommend that you log on Edit Job just to get some clarification before doing so.
Awesome. Thank you. Very good. All right. So what does this look like in a secondary context? Let's go in and have a look. So coming back to my teams, when I'm in a primary environment, you can see there that I've got my staff team, I've got my leadership team, and then I've got my class teams. But when I'm in a secondary environment, it's going to look something different. So let's go into the staff of Dingley Secondary College, another mock school that I invented. So when we go in there, let's let that load. Okay, so what's going on in here is you've got your a lot of the same channels, like, you know, the general channel, the support staff, facilities and grounds, etc. You've even got your year level teams, right? They may need dedicated teams, they may not. But this is just for generalized information. It's not around curriculum, right? So the year 7 team might want to get together and talk about, you know, excursions that are coming up, or incursions or camps and things like that. That can all be happening in there, but it's not where they're going to be talking about their curriculum. Where they're going to be talking about their curriculum is in these kinds of channels here. So you can see here we've got Dingley Secondary College staff of English, and Dingley Secondary College staff of maths, Dingley Secondary College staff of humanities, etc. They have dedicated teams. Now what they have done, and forgive me, it says VCE instead of SACE, but what they have done is they have actually broken humanities 7 to 10 away from humanities SACE, right? Because there's just so much more that is needed, and they're largely, you know, 2 separate domains. This is entirely up to you. You could bring them into one, you could separate them. But when we go into something like humanities, 7 to 10, sorry, that's not one that I built out. I think I built out the English one. Let me have a look. There we go. So these guys have actually brought it all together, right? So here's where year 7 English team will collaborate, the year 8 English team will collaborate, year 9, etc. Year 11, year 12, English literature, etc. These may have dedicated teams, but nevertheless, that's the way we've sort of built it out. Now, I want to show you what it looks like from a class perspective, because when we go into this grade 1 class team here, so this is coming back into primary. Sorry about the noise. I'm not sure if you guys can hear that, but they're putting doors up. You can see here that the entire class is together. Okay, as I said before, they move as a cohort. So when they, can you guys hear that? Thumbs up. Can you hear that bang bang? Yeah, sorry about that. It's funny. My wife said to me last night, she goes, "Oh, they're coming to put in the door tomorrow." I said, "Sorry, what?" So anyway, so you can see here that they do their literacy, they do their maths, they do their science and social studies, and that would all be managed by the classroom teacher. But they also do their language study, right? They're Chinese. So the Chinese teacher would be a member of this team as well. They also do their PE and their performing arts. So their specialists can all be in here as well. And so you can see what the teacher has done here is she's actually thrown up their LMS, for example. She's also got some activities that they're doing, etc. Right? Actually, I'll come in here. I think it's better through here. Oh, apologies. Not working. Demo gods. Thank you. But anyway, nevertheless, those tabs are across the top, right? So that's what that looks like. But when we come into this is really killing me. I'm sure it's killing you guys as well. When we come into a secondary team though, here we've got one here, right, for year 10 English, a secondary class team, it's going to look somewhat different. Okay, because this is now just that cohort, just that group of kids, and we've got things like our units as they unfold, so poetry, film study, etc., right? And those units can be built down. But the same kind of thing we can put across the top our links and our apps and all that kind of thing as well. And that's very much a dynamic place, not a static place, and that can be moved on and changed as we go. All right, so that's basically our whole school structure. Now, before we go into talking about, you know, channels and talking about posts and all that kind of stuff in sort of more detail, does anyone have any questions or any comments about that we've gone with so far? No? Okay. So I want to suggest to you that this, for some of you, this could be something that you're going to do as your project. So what you might choose to do is, if your school hasn't yet looked at a whole staff team, you might want to start to talk to the leadership in the school and make this your project that's setting this up. Okay, and it's a huge task. I won't pretend it's not, in terms of getting everybody on board. The actual setup's really easy, but that might be something that you want to do. Another suggestion that you could do is you might, if you haven't started faculty teams yet, you might want to use 1 or 2 faculties in your school or 1 or 2 year levels and build out a team for that faculty or a group of faculty. So if you've got 3 or 4 people in your team from 3 and 4 different faculties, maybe that's what you want to do. The 3 and 4 different faculties, and each of you are in there rolling it out that way. Or you may want to choose 1 faculty, right, which that is going to be sort of conducive and helpful, and so you may want to build that out as well. That is actually quite an exciting project to do, and I really want to encourage you to do that. The third one that you could do, even though we talked about that this is all about for teachers, you could bring the kids in and you might take a class or a whole year level, and you may help the teachers establish class teams. Okay, so you might say, okay, we're just going to work with Year 7 maths, and the whole of Year 7 maths are going to set up class teams for their groups, et cetera, et cetera. Or maybe, even just for Year 7, or maybe just for Year 8, or even just choose a class rather than the entire Year 7 or the entire Year 8. It's up to you. Don't bite off more than you can chew, but nevertheless, these are things that you could do for your project, and I really want to encourage you to be brave and have a look at teams. All right. Any questions about that or comments? No? Okay, cool. All right, so channels. So think of channels as a place for large bodies of work or specific needs or topics. As I said before, each team starts with a general channel by default, and every channel comes with its own conversations and posts, files, and of course apps that you can bring in as well. The general channel in a class team or a staff team will have the class notebook or the staff notebook. So you can easily add more channels to your team. You click on the ellipses next to the team name and select add channel, and then you need to name your new channels, and notice that your additional channels automatically come with a conversations tab, a file tab, a notes tab, and those kinds of things as well. All right. So if your department is developing a new track or course of study for your particular school, a channel is a great way to keep this work separate from other department endeavors. All right. So everyone who should see what's going on and weigh in on it will be part of that channel and following that channel. Showing and hiding a channel. While working in your team, the list of channels may grow over time, and there may be a channel that you use less often. And so hiding a channel allows you to still have access to that channel, but you won't get the notifications and these things as well. All right, that's my workman. So again, forgive. Okay, doggy's going nuts, but they'll settle down in a minute. All right, so that's the way that the channels work, and that's how we manage our channels. I'm going to skip through this because we sort of covered this when we had our discussion. Now, the other thing I want to suggest to you, and this is something that is important when you grab the slides, and if you decide you're going to look at teams, think about your channels and think about their purpose, right? And this is actually a really good way to do it. Set up two columns, one called channel and one called purpose. Think about the channel that you're going to create, and then think about its purpose and set that out, because what you may find is there's going to be overlap. Right, you may find that, oh, actually what we've got for parent communication and newsletters actually could be one channel. And look at how you can merge your channels down. You may even want to have a third column, which is the members and who is actually going to use that channel as well. All right, so that's something to do. And by doing this in advance, it means that you're not just sort of rolling out teams and letting them grow organically. You're actually in control of the structure as well. All right. So yeah, so when you download these, you'll see this, but obviously this would be blank, and then you would be filling that in as you go. So too with the leadership team. Okay, so and again, this may be sort of outside of your brief, but you can see that it's the same kind of thing. We set our channels, we set our purpose, and again, we may have a third column there where we talk about the people that would be a member of those channels and who's going to be using it. So what does it look like? Well, Victoria Principal, who's the school principal for Murray Street, when she hides, in spite of the fact that when we saw Murray Street, there was a whole heap of channels, there was 16, 17 channels, she's actually hidden a lot of the channels because she doesn't go into those on a daily basis, but she can still visit those channels. She's not locked out by hiding them. So she only sees this many channels, which is great, right? We don't want to be overwhelmed. And so too, you're going to be wanting to teach your staff how to do that. We'll talk about that in a minute. The leadership team for her is very different. She has to be over everything. So she's seeing all her channels and even some of these locked channels that she's a member of. She's not a member of any classes because obviously that's not her domain. That's not where she's existing, but we could invite her into our class team and then eject her when she's had enough at any point, right? So we can be inviting, including and excluding people from our teams all the time. So when she looks at her team structure inside teams, this is what she sees, and there's all those hidden channels, right? So she can go in there into those hidden channels and she can be looking at the channels that she's not necessarily monitoring. When we talk about posts, okay, posts are important because remember, it's not just about file structure and managing files, it's about conversation. All right, so talking about posts, the post tab in Teams appears in the general channel as well as any additional channels that you create, and all members can view and add to the conversations in the general channel and in other channels. And we can use, as we saw a moment ago, @mention. We can @mention individuals, we can @mention groups, and we can @mention channels, and we can @mention the entire team, and they will send notifications, all right? So if any member wants to begin a conversation in the channel designated for their grade level group, rather than sending emails to multiple people, receiving multiple responses and worrying about whether all the necessary parties were included, the member simply begins a conversation in the channel where the work is occurring, and now everyone who should see it and weigh in on the important decisions has visibility and the ability to communicate. Files for all your documents, we've talked about that, but that's where your files live. But remembering that you can create new files and new folders inside here. You can upload from your existing computer that you're on. You can upload directly from there. You can also download files. But remember, when you download, that's outside of Teams, and you're now creating another version of that file outside of Teams. Adding tabs and apps as well. Let me take you into here because I want to show you what that looks like. So if we are here inside our general channel, we've got our, I'm in here as a student, not as a teacher, so I'm locked out. Let's come into the staff of Murray Street, and I want to show you what it looks like when we add tabs across the top. So we've got this little plus button here. You click on that, and here's where our tabs are. Now, what you see here is not an exhaustive list of all your possible apps when that loads, but you can search for more apps through here, okay? So these are my recent apps, right? And your Microsoft 365 stuff is all going to sit up here as well. You can see that I've used YouTube and Wakelet and other things as well. So these are my recent. And then these are all the other apps, right? Well, not all the other apps, but a lot of other apps. So from an education perspective, what we've done is we've thrown the education apps here first, all right? So some of these are free, some of these are a paid service. It's just like when you're on your mobile, right? You download an app, sometimes it's free service, sometimes you have to have a subscription, same kind of thing. But there's a whole heap of third-party apps in there. So if you're using apps at school, you can actually see if there's an existing app. So for example, if I was looking for YouTube, we use YouTube all the time, there it is, there's a dedicated app, all right? But that being said, anything that has a web portal can be added as a website, all right? So if I click on that there, it's going to ask me, what website do you want to add? So I'm going to say, I want to put in ABC Splash because we use that in our group all the time. And then what I would do is I would find ABC Splash. ABS Splash, no. There's ABC Splash. All right, I'm going to grab that link there. Just copy the link, come back in, throw it in here. Do I want it announced? Maybe, maybe not. Okay, I can turn that on or off, and then I click save. I will announce that in the team. And now what happens is that tab, just give it a moment. That tab will appear up here in a moment. There it is. And the web page is opened up inside Teams. All right. So anything that's got a web portal can be there inside Teams. And if at the end of that lesson or at the end of that, that work time that we've had together where we've been planning, we don't need it anymore, we can just click down here on the drop down and we can remove it. Okay. If ever you open a website inside Teams and it doesn't open, you get an error message. There's a little button over here, which is our website button, which will open it in your browser. Cindy, you have a question?
Yes, just in the chat, someone asked if anyone in the channel can add an app, or is it only the owners?
That depends on how you set it up. So when you set up your team, and I'll show you what that looks like, we've got our settings over here. Okay, so this little ellipsis here, I'm going to manage my team. And this is worth exploring as well if you're going to use it with kids, because it shows you what's possible for the kids and not possible for the kids. I can manage my members, my pending requests, I can manage my channels, but over here I can manage my settings. And when I come into settings, I can decide what students are able to do. So students are members, owners are teachers. So when I click on member permissions, do I want them to be able to create and update channels? Probably not. Do I want them to create private channels? Delete and restore, add and remove apps, all those things are in there. So all the permissions and bits and pieces that you want to be able to allow your staff or allow your teachers or allow your kids to do can be happening in here. So for example, if I set up the staff of Murray Street, I am not going to want my members to create and update channels because I've spent all this time on structure, right? Or delete and restore channels, those kinds of things as well. Do you get what I'm saying? So you can have the level of granularity and control that you want, and you can decide whether you delegate those out to the students or out to the other teachers as well. Okay, and it is a very exciting tool and what you can do with it. Any other questions? No. Okay.
There's a question about if somebody adds a tab, does that show for everyone?
Correct.
In my experience,
yes, it does. Yes, definitely. So when you're adding, because remember it's teams, right? So we're all working together. Okay, so we talked about this a moment ago, managing your team, and that's where you can set the permissions and do other cool things as well. But we went through that already. Now, another thing that's really important, and I can't stress, and it's so unsexy and so, uncool, but really it's such a big part of Teams, and that is setting your notifications in Teams. Now, the reason I say this is because if we get too many notifications, it becomes white noise and people will not pay attention. But if we don't set our notification level high enough, we're going to miss things, all right, and important announcements and stuff. So I want to really stress that this is true for you, as well as if you're going to start rolling this out to your staff. So really, really important. So I'm going to show you where we do this. All right, so if I come into my team here, into my Teams app, and this is true of both the web version as well as the dedicated app, I'm going to click on my little picture there, or it might be my initials, whatever yours looks like, inside Teams, okay? And then I come to settings. Now, before we jump into notifications, while we're here, I'm going to show you a few things. First of all, I can have light mode, dark mode, or high contrast mode. I can also choose whether my teams are going to be blocks, grids like this, okay, tiles, or whether it's going to be a list down the side. We can change that as well. You also want to make sure that your English Australia is your language. That means any sort of voice, etc., will actually come out in Australian accent. And your keyboard is definitely US, okay, because we use a US style keyboard in Australia. So English, Australia, English, US, all right? You've got some display things and bits and pieces as well there. Privacy settings can be done over here, but your notifications, which is what we're addressing here, really important, okay? Now, the first thing is missed activity emails. Do you want to get an email every time someone farts on Teams? Probably not. All right. Instead, what you're going to want to do is dial it back. Now, at first, though, you may want to be reminded all the time. I don't, so I turn it off, or maybe just once a day. So this is missed activities. It's not every time something happens, it's just things that you're not seeing, all right? So that's in there as well. Do you, the appearance and sound, do you want to have message previews? Do you want to play sound for incoming calls and notifications? You can turn that on and off. But do you want to get notifications for all activity? I dare say you don't, all right? What I do is come into here into customized, all right? And I customize it myself. Now, what I do now may change, well, what I need now may change in 6 months' time. So it's important to revisit this with your staff. But personal app mentions. Now we have a couple of options. Only in the feed, or do I want the banner as well? So the banner is basically going to be that little purple thing or whatever color yours is that comes across and announces something and moves back, right? Now I'm just going to say I only want it in the feed, right? But if I want it banner and feed there, Teams mentions. Again, I'm going to say just in the feed, but you get to set those there. All right. So I'm not going to take you through and show you each little click, but go in and have a look and set this to how you think you want it. If you're finding you're getting too many announcements, no worries. Go back in, dial it back. If you're finding you're missing things, go in and turn it up. Now, this is our universal right across Teams settings, but when we go down into our team, we can set individual channels, right? So for example, let's say I'm in, I want, just in the banner, just in the feed for almost everything. But when I come into my own channel, that is I'm a reception teacher, I'm a prep teacher, I may say this is a very important channel, I want everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the ellipses here. I'm going to go to channel notifications and I'm going to say all activities for that channel. Okay, so what that means now is in spite of my global settings, those channels that are important to me, I can turn those up without turning everything up. The other thing to remember is when you hide a channel, so for example, I'm not a specialist teacher, I don't work with the specialist teachers, I rarely chat with them, I don't like them. No, I'm making that up. We click on this here, the ellipses, and we hide the channel. Now, when you hide the channel, you will no longer get notifications for that channel. So that's how you turn some of that useless white noise off. But remember, you can always visit the channel. It now lives down here in hidden channel. All right, I'm going to put that back, and it's really easy to show it again. I just hover over here and then show, and my friends, the specialists, will be back in my tree. Okay, so that's our notifications. Again, not just for yourself, but also for the people that you're training. Notifications need to be set, but it's personalized. They need to set it their own way. Okay. Any questions? No? All right, cool. So we've done a lot of Teams for students already. I've sort of gone in and sort of chat and addressed some of these things as we've gone along, but not everything. So a lot of you probably addressed this when you were doing remote learning. But we know that there's so much that we can do with Teams in terms of Teams calling, but Teams is much more than just, as we've seen there, Teams is much more than just the video calling and remote access, right? It's all about managing our entire class. So when we create a classroom, and here we have, this is one that I was looking for before. Here we have what it looks like in a secondary classroom, right? So this is physical science 11B. It's just one teacher with one group of students, and they're building out their units as they go, right? But again, it's going to look different for primary. But we can stay organized with our class, all right? So again, not just about the calls. We can organize things through through OneNote Class Notebook, which we'll have a little bit of a look at later, and you can organize the content. You can also get that student voice happening, right? So definitely we can go through calls and video, but they can also chat with one another, and they can also be, uploading their content and working with each other in the content space. We've got those Office 365 apps and files that we saw before. When we create our class team, it's easy. We just come along and we click on class. It creates a OneNote class notebook. We don't have to use that, but it also creates a whole heap of other things like assignments, features, and things like that in there as well. It can support up to 5,000 members in the team, but remembering when we're thinking about our class, we're going to have a lot fewer kids in there than that, of course. That's more thinking about university level and that kind of thing. When we create a class team, students can't leave the team. It's invite only and hidden from others, so no one can accidentally stumble on your team and join your team. And there's also a read-only class materials folder in there as well. But this has recently gone up to 300 students. Assignments and OneNote class notebooks supports a maximum of 200 students. So while we can have 5,000, really at the end of the day, if we're going to be using all the features, we need to be thinking it's about 200. And hopefully that you guys are not working with class sizes that big. That being said, you could have a whole year 7 team or a whole year 8 team, you know, where the kids are getting, you know, announcements right across the year level and that kind of thing. But remembering that's going to, you know, limit what you can do with class notebook and assignments and those kinds of things, but you may not use it in that context. The other thing to remember is that the way we have designed this is a class team is really set up for just one class, okay? So meaning, you know, somewhere between, you know, 10 and, you know, let's say 40 students, that kind of thing. That's where you're actually going to get the most out of this, and that's really the basic design. But that doesn't mean you can't adapt it and use it with different sort of group sizes. Again, this could be something you do as a project. In fact, I really want to encourage you because, you know, the sort of the whole hybrid approach is really quite exciting, what you can do with your kids. Adding students to the class, you can create an invite link. You could sit with them face to face and say, here's the invite link. Let's all open Teams, add the invite link, and they're all added. Or you could give them a join code, or you can add a distribution group if it exists in your school, or you can add the students individually as well. We're not able to use student information system data because that's all managed at a department level. We can do things like announcements to our students as well. Okay, so you can see up here we've got the announcement. We can, whether we want everyone to be able to reply, we can put that announcement across multiple teams, across multiple channels as well. When we talk about teams, and I will come back and just, actually no, I'll do it when I look at assignments. So looking at Teams meetings, you guys are across this because you're in the middle of one, but you can schedule the meetings. 300 students at a time can be in the meeting at once. You can have now the 7x7, 49 people on the view at once. Recording the meetings, of course, can happen. There's live English captions. There are actual languages as well. Damien, can I get you to mute, mate? You've come off mute. You can, obviously the kids can chat, share screen and content, everything that you've experienced, you can be doing that with the kids. And that's not just about COVID, of course, right? You may have bushfires in your area, flooding, these kinds of things where kids are going to be working from home. So having this waiting in the wings is actually really cool. One of the things that I stressed when we had our first lockdown in Melbourne afterwards, I said, oh, there could be another one, and you know, all that kind of stuff. And when the second lockdown came, a lot of teachers had actually moved right away from Teams. Well, that's over. And, you know, just having it there in the background is actually, you know, and ready to go is actually key. So setting up those class teams and having them ready to go is good for you. I'm going to skip through this video here because it's just about together mode, which we've seen. Videos can be recorded as well, which we've talked about. Carolyn, we're going to talk now about the Teams assignment experience as well. Remembering, guys, we're just sort of going over the top of this, but I will give you links and bits and pieces through the slides and through the channels where you can go and do a deeper dive and explore this. But we've got LMS, Learning Management System features that have been built into Teams, and one of them being the assignments up here. Now, what we can do with a new assignment is we can create, you know, the title, of course, we can enter our instructions, we can add resources, you know, Word documents, OneNote pages, YouTube clips, video, you know, web page links, all that kind of stuff can happen in here as well. You can set the number of points for an assignment. You can also create a rubric, and that rubric can be seen by the students and can be set as success criteria. So the students know exactly what you're looking for in that assignment. And then you can also use that rubric to mark the assignment and give feedback to the students. You can decide where you want to assign that assignment to, so it could go into, you know, a certain team, a certain channel. It can go across teams, right? So we can be sending it to multiple groups. So if I'm teaching 4 Year 7 classes, I don't have to set this up 4 times. I can set it up once and push it out across to all the different students. Do I want to assign it to all students in that channel, or do I want to assign it to just certain students? I can differentiate there. The due date, the time due, do I want to allow late turn-in? Turn-it-in, those of you that have done university recently will know Turn-it-in. Turn-it-in is a plagiarism checker that is a subscription service. But it is available if your school wants to purchase that. You can then switch that on inside Teams as well. So we're integrating those apps more and more all the time. You've got a grade book as well. So we've got, see, here we are in this channel here. We've got the assignments tab, but we've also got the grades tab, right, which lives in class teams. The kids can't see it, only I can see it. The kids will get a different view from assignments than I will as a teacher, all right? But you can see here, I've got all my students. I've got all their assignments, right, and assessments that are here. Remembering, oh, sorry, I will stop and quickly say we can bring forms in as assignments as well. It doesn't have to be like, you know, a Word document or a PowerPoint document or whatever. We can actually set a forms assignment as well. But anyway, nevertheless, you can see I've got all my different assessments here. I've got a cumulative total. And I might say that's pretty good, but I want to go in, I want to have a look at what Juan is doing. So I can click on Juan and go down to a student view. And now it brings up Juan. I'm looking at what Juan has done. Okay, he's got assignments that that's only due today. It's still missing, but that's all right. He's got till later today. That's no problem. But look at this, February 15th, he missed this one as well. These 3 are late. And these 3 are turned in, and I can see his scores, etc. Now, when they submit their assignments, I can give them feedback directly on their assignment using the keyboard or using the stylus, but I can also give them feedback inside the assignments feature as well. Okay, we can also have a feedback loop where I can get an assignment submitted, give them some feedback, send it back to them, and then they can resubmit it on and on. It's not anything final. So we can use this summatively, and we can also use this formatively. All right, but there we go. I can be having a look at what Juan is doing there. Now, that's assignments, right? Before we move on, I want to remind you that you can go into the Teams channel, and there's links and bits and pieces in there. But more importantly, we have a channel, sorry, not a channel, we have a link, support.office.com, and this is living inside the team already. Education, support.office.com/education. This is important for you guys to know. Remember that the one that's easy to remember, of course, is support.office.com, but I will throw the link that it takes you to into the chat now. My computer yesterday was going so slow, and it's doing it again today, so I'm sorry. So if someone wants to throw that in the chat for us, support.office.com. But here's our education, help and learning. Now, this is in the general channel, but if you want to find out how to do things and explore things, I'm going to share some videos and bits and pieces with you later. But look what happens when I scroll down. I've got these different areas like, you know, Microsoft Teams, OneNote, Class Notebook, those kinds of things. So I could type my question in here. You know, how do we create assignments in Teams? Or I could come down here into Teams, click on the link. And this is all about not just Teams, this is Teams for education, all right? So what's new? But look, getting started, assignments. So I'm going to click on assignments, and here's all my articles about how to step-by-step setting up my assignments, right? And things inside Teams as well, managing my teams, troubleshooting my teams as well. If you want just general information about Teams, not from an education perspective, you can come to support.office.com/Teams, okay? Support.office.com/Teams, and that is going to take you down to all the basics of Teams, all right? But it's not edu-focused. Okay, so it's just, you know, how to set up teams and channels, notifications, all those kinds of things are in there. But back here at support.office.com/education is where I can find out how to do things from an education perspective. Those links are all inside your channels, inside the team that we're working on today. But nevertheless, I wanted to make you aware of those, okay? Especially as we're doing sort of that sort of surface dive across the top. Okay, now I'm going to talk to you about the Insights tab. All right, now the Insights tab can be added through here. What I'm about to show you is the Insights tab definitely exists, but what I'm about to show you is coming soon, and I mean coming really soon. All right, so what we are building into Teams is the ability to see what our students are doing and their level of engagement right across Office 365, Microsoft 365, not just Teams. So this is where it gets really exciting. Now, if you were like me, some years ago, back when I was in school, every time I heard the word data, I wanted to put a gun to my head, because what that really meant to me was more work for me, collecting data, putting it in, you know, spreadsheets, all that kind of stuff. It really did my head in. We at Microsoft, and when I joined Microsoft and people started talking about data, I was saying, oh, be careful. Principals love it. Teachers, not so much, right? What we have done is we have all that Office 365 graph, which lives underneath Office 365, is collecting data on students and staff all the time. Now, what we've done is we've actually got that data to be fed back to you as a teacher in meaningful ways. So you don't have to collect it. You don't have to compile it. We will collect it and compile it for you and then bring it back to you in meaningful ways. So in the Insights tab, we're going to have what's called spotlights. So it's going to bring up things to your attention. First of all, look at this. Alex Wilbur wasn't active at all last week in the team space or in the Microsoft 365 space, right? That's important information. 40% of your students are working on assignments late at night. This is the sort of data it's bringing back. So I might want to have a chat with my kids about, you know, better time management, you know, getting the right amount of sleep, etc. We had a discussion, an online discussion about Shakespeare. 29% of your students participated in it. That might be a good number. That might be a really bad number. But let's go and see the discussion. Time management. Look at this. Ella Taylor, one of my students, hasn't started her Comedy of Errors assignment yet. Okay, so it's even telling me that. She hasn't even looked at it. Grade trends, right? And also workload, right? Eldon Rogue, he has submitted 6 out of 8 assignments late. So this kind of data is really crucial. It's not just their academic data, it's also their well-being data as well. So this is what's coming very, very soon, and this is hopefully going to motivate you guys to think about this is something that we want to do at our school. So we have those 4 areas: digital activities, communication activity, assignment status, and grades. And then when we drill down into that, it's going to look something like this. So I'm going to go into digital activity for my Year 11 English group, and it's going to show me what times these students are logged in. Okay, and obviously we could go right across into the middle of the night and see who's up in the middle of the night working on their assignments. We are not looking at when they're on their device. It's only when they are engaged or not engaged with the schoolwork, right? And this data is owned by the department. It is not owned by Microsoft. It is not used for marketing purposes or anything like that. But I can see who's doing what at what time. I can look at my students like that. In communication, I can see, I'm not going to be able to see their chats, that's still private, but I can see who's starting communication, who's starting new posts, right? So that's telling me about who's initiating things. And who are they talking to, right? Our students are talking just to other classmates, or are they talking to educators, or both, right? So we're seeing here, this student, for example, she's starting some conversations, she's chatting to a degree with her classmates, but she's spending most of her time chatting with me. And also, who's she responding to? She's responding to her classmates, she's responding to me, and vice versa. The assignment status, again, different to the data in the...
Sorry, can I just jump in? Sorry.
Please.
Yeah, just around that stuff, interesting some questions about it. We don't have it enabled in South Australia.
Okay, sure. But that's a conversation to maybe be having with the department, and I dare say at some point it's going to be switched on. But remembering that this isn't even active for anyone yet. What I'm showing you is coming.
Yeah, okay. Do you know if Microsoft's looking at like long-term solutions about how we give oversight of what the kids are talking about?
Well, Sorry, you may have to just go on. I'm getting a bit of an echo from you there. So if you can go.
Yeah, sorry, everyone's
right. Cool. So the data is managed and owned by the department themselves. All right. So they will be able to switch on and switch off what they want to be available. Right. So when I've talked with developers around this, you know, when we've had sort of demos, I talked about the anonymization, and they said the problem with anonymizing all this is that it becomes useless. If we can't, you know, if we can't see what individual students are doing or class groups of students are doing, and it's all anonymous data, then we can't, you know, then as I said, it becomes useless. But it will ultimately be a department decision. But certainly they will have control over what is made available to teachers, what is made available to students, and vice versa. And ultimately the oversight will sit with the department. Cool. All right, cool. So yeah, at the moment though, in terms of communication, the department can see the chats, but you as a teacher cannot. And that's actually to your benefit, because if all of a sudden you could see the chats, you would be on the hook for monitoring and, you know, duty of care and all that kind of stuff. So the fact that you can't see the chat is important, but there are records kept. So if a student was to come and say in a chat, another student was saying all these horrible things about me, the department can draw that out. And that might be a conversation you want to have with the kids as well. But what that will ultimately do, it'll drive them to WhatsApp, and then they'll just do it on WhatsApp. Okay, so there's assignment status. It's a different view of the same data that we saw a moment ago in the assignment feed. Remember, the assignment stuff that we saw before is available now, but this is the way it will look when it's available through Insights. We can see their grades and all that kind of stuff. So as I was saying, it's about taking that data. It's about taking that data and collecting it for you, so you're not burdened with collecting the data, and then presenting it back to you in meaningful ways. All right. Okay. So we're going to have a bit of a reflection time now. Hopefully you remember how to do this. The most senior person in your group, let's come in here. The most senior person is going to go into your team channel. Sorry, this is just going to load. Fingers crossed it does. There we go. We'll go down into your channel and we'll start the meeting. Okay, so please remember it's the most senior person so we don't get multiple meetings going on. If you're in the same room, well, obviously you don't need to do that at all. And I want you to reflect on this point here, which is how might you help your school adopt and use Teams? This may not be your project, but I want you to think about this anyway. Okay, so how might you help your school adopt and use Teams? Think about all the blockers and all that kind of stuff that's going to happen as well. We've got 10 minutes. Actually, we've got 8 minutes, and then we will go straight to break. So we will come back 11 a.m. your time, 11:30 my time. All right. So 11 a.m. your time, we will come back and continue to work. So please take this 8 minutes, work together on this reflection point. After that, break off, enjoy your break. See you back here at 11.